know your stories about Shatner. He is the biggest William Shatner
You just did an
fan.
episode of Boston Legal?
Yeah, in fact, I've been on 5 or 10 of those over the course of the show, Boston Legal, and it's ending. That is,
This
the
is the
series
last
is
season.
ending. Yeah, this is it. And so this is the next to the last episode. And the thing is, the story, as it is, and the stories about him is that, for me, it's just so cool to be with the guy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like a story, and then he did this.
Yeah.
The story is, it's William Shatner, and you're lucky enough to, and by the way, this particular episode is about a Thanksgiving dinner, so 80% of the time we're all around a table, and in between takes just chatting. He's such a cool guy, and it's people's Candice Bergen, what James Spader I had worked with anyway, but I mean, and it's William Shatner, and one of the reasons I've always dug the guy is that, first of all, it's Captain Kirk. To me, that's the real Captain Kirk.
Yes, it is.
It's Captain
I'm
Kirk,
with you.
and it's sort of like Sean Connery being James Bond.
Yes.
I'm glad everyone else did it, and good luck to you. Congratulations.
Yeah.
But, no, James Bond is Sean Connery.
Yeah.
And Captain Kirk, is Captain Kirk. So that's one. Plus, I love the movies they made. And he is, speaking of happy guys, he is someone who has always had a great sense of humor about himself, which is why he's made all those commercials looking a little confused and and using the voice almost too much. It's almost, I don't do impressions, but he's almost making fun of himself. And this guy is is the classic happy camper. He always comes to the set. Everyone on the set knows it. People in makeup, good morning, hi, how are you? He drives up. What a beautiful day. He's just someone who said, if you said, do you like show business? He would say something like, well, look around you. Do I like show business? He's been the star of 5 television series. Over
T.J.
the
Hooker.
T.J. Hooker and
all
not
of
just Star Trek and now in Boston Legal, great run. They're funny and witty together. David Kelly's shows are terrific.
Denny Crane could have his own show, his own spin-off. He's funny.
He could. He has. They really write well for them. So, I mean, the whole thing is, discussing how you could look like you were eating the turkey. Any actor has had scenes, by the way, whether it's in movies or TV, where you're supposed to look like you're eating. It's a Thanksgiving dinner.
And how do you do that? Because that food's sitting there
So you're
for the
not really
longest time.
eating?
By the way, and it looks bad when you don't eat.
Yeah.
You know this, and I know this. Everyone out there knows this. That as great a show as The Sopranos was, you always noticed it when James Gandolfini, he never ate anything.
Yeah, he was twirling the
You'd
spaghetti
hear-
constantly.
Exactly. You'd
Yeah.
hear a lot of clicking of the fork on the plate,
Yeah.
but it always took you out of the scene a little because you want to say, you're supposed to be eating. And and by the way, God bless him, but it's not like he's unfamiliar with it. So, you want to say, do some eating. So all I'm saying is that
Right.
people notice it. You're making stories. You're an actor. You got to eat sometimes.
Yeah.
But if you get trapped in it, if you get trapped in one moment, you're going to do each camera angle 15 times, and there may be 10 setups, so that's 150 times. You got to put something on the fork, and you got to say, I know what you mean. I'd be boom, and a big fork in the mouth, and then be putting more cranberry sauce.
Well, I'll never forget, it was Gary Marshall who directed you in Pretty Woman with Julia Roberts and all that was on our show and told us, he was talking about an eating scene that he had to do in a restaurant with Julia Roberts and Richard Gere, and there was dessert or something, ice cream, and he's the one that said, it's never ice cream, because I always thought, how does that not melt under hot lights? And he said, ice cream is cottage cheese.
Yes.
And he said, so you see when the actors are eating ice cream, it's really cottage cheese. And I thought, how awful that's got to be. Yeah.
Well, as you and anyone can understand, it's not hard to imagine. And I like cottage cheese. You like cottage cheese. I think all God's children like cottage cheese. But you know what? After 75 spoonfuls of it, you're ready to blow your brains out. You're ready to say, you know what? I would just as soon be in the Kalahari starving than to have more cottage cheese.
Yeah.
So it has this comical side, but it's just fun. That's why he chose, because the character also drinks a lot. He didn't have to eat anything. He was always drinking. And they'd bring another bottle of wine. He'd pick up the bottle of wine from the table. And the wine is, and it was his idea, by the way. It's great. It's not, they had
It was real wine?
No, here's the thing. No, here's the thing. It's non-alcoholic wine, which are terrible, by the way. They're very, very bad. I don't mean just as wine. It's a terrible drink. It's a very bad tasting thing.
Yeah, who
so
makes
he
non-alcoholic wine?
Yeah, and it's a giant Y. But this is something you want to say, you know what? Why don't you just take the skin off of all women. You know, you want to say, no, here's a woman, but there's no skin. Well, what's the point then? So then you want. So he was the one who had the idea, though, of making it. He had a certain tea that they made for him, and we all drank the same thing. I have a drinking story, though. I have to tell you about someone else.
Okay.
Because this is fun, and it's never going to come up again, and I just remembered it. There's a movie that was just out last year I was in that called The Bag Boy, which didn't do that well, but is going to be out there forever. It's a very good movie, actually, and it's with Dennis Farina and Rob Hoffman and me and a bunch of. It was good movie.
The Bag Boy.
The Bag Boy.
Okay.
And it's very funny. And Dennis Farina, as people may know, is the coolest guy in the world. You have to be Italian and from Chicago to just be that cool, you know. Hi, sweetheart, you know. And you can't
Either
say
plays
that.
the gangster usually or the detective.
Exactly,
right?
and
Yeah.
he was a
He's
real
got that look.
homicide detective in Chicago for
Yeah.
20 years.
Oh.
This is a tough guy. He's a classic, full head of hair, salt and pepper. Hi, sweetheart. You know, and
Yeah.
and he can pull that off with loafers and sport jackets. So he could be he's either a gangster or a cop or
Yeah.
something. He's just so the whole time during this movie. This is 5-6 weeks. He's saying, someone come, Dennis, you want another cup of coffee? And say, thanks, sweetheart. And he's the only one in the world who can say sweetheart. If you or I ever said sweetheart to someone,
Yeah.
we'd catch it on the head.
Right.
A vase would come flying across the room
Certainly.
and hit us.
Yeah.
Thank you, sweetheart. Bam! So, and it's just not in my nature or yours. So, but he would always say, hey, sweetheart, I bet another cup of coffee. And because he always had this coffee machine in his trailer. The last day of shooting, and we had the best time because we knew everything from the John Ford movies, Howard Hawks movies, everything. Plenty to discuss. Singing, lyrics from John Wayne songs. So, the last day, I'm standing next to him, and he says, Dennis, want another cup of coffee? Thanks, sweetheart. And he says to me, Larry, you want a cup of coffee? And I said, well, I can get my own. I don't ask people for anything. Well, that's all right. And she said, no, that's all right. I'll get it for you. And I said, well, I don't. All right, okay. And then he said, as she walked away, he said, here, while you're waiting, have a sip of mine. Which is a little weird if you think about it.
Yeah.
Who takes a sip of someone's
Right.
coffee? And it's a cup, and we're very close. We're right next to each other, so our heads are close. I said, well, that's all right. Now, I know him pretty well by now. And then he looks at me, but one of those, like, gangster looks, right directly in the eye. I said, have a sip of my coffee. And I'm just looking around. I thought, it was very odd. I said, well, Dennis, I want to take a sip. And I said, all right, it's the weirdest thing. So I took the cup, and I took a big sip. It wasn't coffee.
Ah. What do you put in there? Vodka?
No, it was something brown. It was, and I looked at him. It was a brown lick, and I looked at him. And he started laughing. I said, "Are you kidding me? Is that what the code means? A cup of coffee? That this whole time on the movie, it's in your trailer. It's not a coffee machine. It was like a code of Dennis. Ready for another cup of coffee? Thanks, sweetheart. And he said, "Sure, that's what I do. 5-6 weeks. You're off on a location somewhere." And I thought that was the coolest show business kind of Rat Pack feeling thing.
Sure.
It wasn't like straight whiskey.
Right.
I mean,
But close.
but it wasn't far.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was so when you're not expecting that,
Yeah.
so by
Yeah,
getting
suddenly you're
Larry, would you
13
wanna,
again. Yeah.
Well,
Drinking for the first time.
exactly.
Yeah,
So by
yeah.
saying, Larry, would you like a cup of my coffee?
Yeah.
Meant so she brought me a drink too, and it's the last day, and I'm no stranger to drinking, but I don't drink. You don't want to drink at work or something. And at any rate, though, I thought that was such a cool kind of. Again, it felt like a Rat Packy Vegas
Sure, man.
kind of show business from the 50s of that all day long. There's hiya Frank, hiya Dean, hiya Dennis, and they're all just how about some wink wink? How about some coffee?
Have a cup of coffee.
Oh, like the early Tonight Show with Carson. So, you ready for more coffee, Dean? Well, thank you, Johnny.
Yeah.
They're
The
all
drink in
just-
this moment. Larry Miller's at the Punchline tonight for a couple of shows, and tomorrow night 3 shows. Go to punchline.com or 404-252-LAFF. Always a pleasure, man. So good to see you. Thank you for getting up early and coming in.
Same
Appreciate
here.
it.
Good luck, guys, and thanks for having us. We'll see you the next time.
All right. Larry Miller and Jeff Hollinger with an information update on B98.5 FM.